Now, land issues are among the most sensitive issues in Africa. And recently, South Africa's parliament published a bill intended to change the property rights clause in the constitution and empower the state to expropriate private property without compensation. During his recent three-nation tour of Africa, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said South Africa's plan to allow expropriation of private property without compensation would be disastrous for the country's economy and its people. Now, for more into the story, I'm joined by Ernst Roets, Afriforum's Head of Policy and Action, and Monique Taute, Afriforum's Campaigns Manager. Welcome, both of you, to Africa 54. Now, what's the contentious issue behind this bill?
Well, the problem with this bill is it's a move by the South African government to empower the government or the state to decide whose property should be expropriated by the state, and then also to decide what compensation should be. So taking people's property, in other words, and then deciding how much are you going to pay them for the property that you're taking from them, but then also giving government the power or the authority to say, well, in some cases we would like to give people zero compensation. So to be able to take your stuff without paying for it. And it's framed as something that would help the poor and so forth. But we know the South African government, we know what they've been doing for years. This is a push to get more control into the hands of the government.
So you say that as Afriforum, but what are the proponents of this bill standing by? What are they pushing?
The proponents of the bill are saying that this has to be done to correct historic injustices with regard to land in South Africa. The problem with that is there were many injustices in South Africa when it comes to the land issue. There were people whose land was taken from them, and that has to be corrected, and we support that. That is restitution, to say someone's land was taken, we need to give that back. But the problem with this is this would give government authority to take people's property that had nothing to do with restitution whatsoever.
So where does Afriforum come in? And because you're here in the US, who have you been talking to, and are you talking about this particular issue?
Just as an introduction, Afriforum is the largest civil rights organization on the African continent. We have more than 235,000 members. And what we are seeing is that there are millions of people in Africa and in South Africa that support freedom and free markets. But what is happening is there's a lot of governments in Africa, including the South African governments, that keeps looking to China and think that socialism can still work. So what we're seeing in South Africa is, for instance, that our government now wants to expropriate private property without compensation, and this is a big problem. So we are in the US, we have spoken to the State Department, we are speaking to think tanks, we have also spoken to the Foreign Affairs Committee, members in the House of Representatives as well as the Senate. So we are pushing the fact that it will be detrimental for South Africa as well as other countries who have investments in Africa, in South Africa specifically.
So Ernst, as we mentioned in the introduction, Secretary Pompeo did mention that this would be disastrous for South Africa's economy and its people. What's Afriforum's reaction to his comments?
We welcome the comment. We've been campaigning internationally to get more voices abroad to speak out about what is happening in South Africa. And the Secretary of State is right. What we have in South Africa is we frequently hear members of the ruling party in South Africa say that they are inspired by the land reform policies of Robert Mugabe, but they want to do the same thing but without violence. So the fact of the matter is the violence was the result of the policy. So it would be disastrous to tamper with private property rights. We're not saying that there should not be restitution or correction of historic injustices. That needs to happen. But this is something else. This is nationalization of land.
So have you taken a legal action against this bill, and where is that? And wouldn't it be perhaps better to wait until you hear the outcome of the case then?
Yes. So there's a process currently to change the constitution. Part of the problem, there's a court case. We're involved with a court case with the South African government about this because the process is inundated with procedural irregularities. And one of it, to give you an example, is the process currently is to get the public's input on whether the constitution should be changed. And while this process is happening, the state president in South Africa has announced repeatedly that the constitution is going to be changed, regardless of the process. So that means the process is a farce, and it's something that we will take to court.
Now, I read somewhere, Monique, about Afriforum reacting to this issue and mentioning China's footprint in Africa. How does that affect South Africa, especially on this case?
That's the whole socialism problem. So we're continuously seeing that African countries believe that socialism can work, and we believe that, well, the South African governments in South Africa, they are telling the poor people of the country that we are going to take this land and we're going to give it to you, like type of a Robin Hood type of thing. But actually, this is not what's going to happen. Our government wants to nationalize the land in South Africa, and we are seeing, and we actually have a report that we have published, and according to this report and the research that we have done, China actually wants the mineral rights in South Africa. So this is something big that that the US and the world should take note of.
You mentioned that you've spoken to the House Committee and also the State Department officials. What has been their reaction to this?
The reaction, so firstly, we can't speak for the State Department, but the reaction has been very good. We've had many meetings. We met with independent researchers. We met with political commentators, columnists, people in the House and the Senate. And I think firstly, we can see that people are aware that there's something happening in South Africa that the US should be concerned of, particularly the role that China is playing and how this could have an impact on the US. But so far, the feedback has been positive, and we believe our trip so far has been very good. We are hoping, one of our missions here is to get more public voices speaking out, expressing its concern about what's happening in South Africa, not so much in terms of what the consequences for South Africans would be, but also what the consequences for the US would be.
Right. Thank you very much, Ernst and Monique, for talking to us on Africa 54.
Thank you for having us.
Right. Ernst Roets is Afriforum's Head of Policy and Action, and Monique Taute is Afriforum's Campaigns Manager.